about British trade in 1987. As you listen, write down the numbers in appropriate places.
Good morning. I'd like this morning to continue our discussion about British trade, and I have brought a couple of pie charts that I'd like you to look at. They give information about British trade by geographical distribution in 1987. The left pie chart is for exports, and the right one is for imports. Now let's look first at the left pie chart, the exports pie chart. You can see the European Community accounted for 49% of Britain's exports trade in 1987, and the other developed countries accounted for respectively North America at 16%, the rest of Western Europe outside the European Community at 10%, and the other developed countries accounted for 5%. These shaded areas represent the developing countries portion. The larger one is for the other developing countries, except the oil exporting countries, which accounts for 11%, and the smaller, which is for the oil exporting countries, received 7% of Britain's exports in 1987. The last and smallest was Britain's rather minor exports to former centrally planned economies, and this figure was only 2% in 1987. Now let's take a look at the right pie chart, which is for imports. The distribution here is roughly similar. The European Community accounted for 53% of Britain's imports in 1987, and the other developed countries accounted for, again, a large portion. The rest of Western Europe imported 14% of Britain's imports in 1987. North America accounted for 11%, and other developed countries represent 8% of Britain's imports in 1987. Turning to other developing countries once again, the largest of the two shaded areas is for developing countries other than oil exporting countries, and these accounted for about 10% of Britain's imports in 1987, and the remaining shaded area, which is for oil exporting countries, accounted for only 2% of Britain's import in 1987. 2% also is the figure for Britain's imports from centrally planned economies, as you can see from the lined area in the figures.
Listening activity number 18.
You are going to listen to a talk. Look at the table below first, then listen carefully to the talk and fill in the percentages in the correct column.
Researchers have done some investigation into what young people believe is a woman's place in society. Here is a report on some of their findings. The Chinese are consistent supporters of sex equality, with only 12% of young people believing that a woman's place is in the home. 93% are enthusiastic about sharing the housework, and 85% of them believe that women should be paid the same for doing the same job. 80% think that nursing is a woman's job, and 90% of them believe that mining is only men's work. 13% of Chinese, an extremely low percentage, believe cooking is solely a woman's job, and 7%, even fewer, think that only she should do the washing. For a more traditional view of a woman's place, turn to the Japanese. 52% think women belong in the home. 89% of young people believe that a couple should share the housework and get equal pay for doing the same job. 65% of them believe nursing is a good job for women, and 90% believe that mining is solely men's work. 75% of them believe a woman should do the washing, and 82% of them believe she should do the cooking at home. 80% of Koreans believe men and women should get the same pay for the same job. 39% believe a woman's place is in the home. 75% of them believe that housework should be shared between men and women if both work, but there's almost a complete reversal when it comes to doing the washing and cooking. Here, very few believe in sharing the work. 62% and 65% respectively believe that women should do both. 85% of Koreans believe nursing is a woman's job, and 87% think mining is a man's job. Turning to Thailand, we find a country that's not over-enthusiastic about equality. 45% of young people believe that a woman should stay at home. However, there's an interesting 20% gap between whether cooking and washing are solely women's jobs. 67% vote for women doing the washing, while only 47% feel the same way about cooking, and 86% of Thais believe that housework should be shared between men and women. 87% of young people believe that men and women should be paid the same for the same job. 92% think nursing is women's work, and 95% of them believe mining should be done by men.